Hey, it's Gabe with a programming note before we begin. We usually release new episodes on Mondays, but next week we're going to be in Geneva for Watches and Wonders, and that means next week's episode will drop during Watches and Wonders itself, likely on Thursday, April 16th. We'll, of course, cover all the insider scuttlebutt from the watch industry's biggest event, and we can't wait to bring it to you. In the meantime, on with the show. I kind of have a different vision for how I would run this thing.
You want to put them on a PIP.
Some of these might be on a performance improvement plan, not really.
But we do that because we want to see them grow.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
It's not that we're trying to push them out.
This is Openwork, a look inside the watch industry, a podcast from Collective Horology. I'm Gabe Riley, co-founder of Collective.
I'm Asher Apkin, co-founder of Collective Horology.
Collective Horology is an independent watch retailer based in Southern California. We carry a wide range of independent brands, including Ming, Fears, J.N. Shapiro, and more. To learn more about us and to check out our available inventory, visit collectivehorology.com or visit Collective's annual open house event, which is happening Saturday, June 6th, in Hollywood in Los Angeles, California. And big news, we announced what we thought at the time was the full brand roster on our last episode. And we have, speaking of Los Angeles, a very important addition to the show. And spoiler alert, I'm wearing a watch from that very brand.
So as a recap, coming to Open House this year is Armin Strom, Carl Suki, David Cando, Holthenricks, Ming, Dominique Renault, and Renault Tixier, Singer, Fears, Chapek, Sartori Biard, Speak Marine, Fleming, and somebody that we have wanted to be part of Open House forever, but for logistical reasons, this has not been possible, but will be this year, J.N. Shapiro.
Yeah. Josh's watches will be in the house at Openwork, which is huge. I mean, especially for an event in Los Angeles. J.N. Shapiro is an LA-based brand. They have brought watchmaking to Los Angeles in a serious way. And
perhaps our oldest partner.
One of our oldest partners. Yeah, for sure. There would be no Collective without Josh. And it's just cool. Even though he's based here in LA, it is still a treat and a very rare pleasure for people to be able to go hands-on with his watches. So we'll have a selection of his watches there, as well as some folks from his team on hand to share them. So we are stoked. If you want to attend, you can do so at collectivehorology.com/openhouse. You do need to RSVP. There's no charge. Tickets are free, but we do need you to sign up because there is a guest list, and we will only be able to let in people who are on that list. If you want to invite a friend, please do. Just have them register, and we can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, and just a little thing, if you do have a guest coming, do make sure that you include their name, because if you put your name down twice, it will be deduped. So that means it'll only be...
that's the thing.
Yeah, if you register 3 times, there's
no plus ones.
No plus ones.
Yeah.
So for the security of all of us, it's just important that you do that. This public service announcement has concluded.
All right. Well, today it's the Watch Brand Draft, the first ever collective or Openwork Watch Brand Draft. And, watch drafts have become this thing of lore in watch podcasts.
Before we even go there, let's make sure we're clear. We're not doing this from a watch standpoint.
No. This is a watch brand draft. We're drafting watch businesses.
Exactly.
So that's the idea here. We're not drafting watches, but we're drafting watch brands in 3 different categories. Before we get to those categories, let's set some important ground rules for the businesses we're drafting. So the idea here is we're not picking a watch we'd like to wear or own. We're picking a watch business, a watch brand we'd like to own and operate.
Yes.
So your choice here means you're stuck with this brand. You got to own it and operate it, and tell us why. So we're going to pick in 3 different categories, but there are some important ground rules. First of all, no AP, Patek, or Rolex. Those brands are off the table. Anyone else we should take off the table or leave it there?
Yeah, no Richard Mille. What are we doing?
Okay. No Richard Mille either. Second, and this is also really important, especially for the listening pleasure of the audience here, and to make sure there's no conflicts of interest, no brands we carry at Collective.
Nope.
So I haven't seen yours. You haven't seen mine. I don't know what you have, but hopefully you haven't picked any brand that we carry. I made sure.
Just need a minute here.
I made sure we didn't. So there will be no commercial plugs. And look, some of the part of the reasons we may select some of these brands is based on constructive feedback, not just, oh, we'd love to own them and sit back and print money. Some things some selections could be, at least in my case, like I kind of have a different vision for how I would run this thing.
You want to put them on a PIP.
They're on, some of these might be on a performance improvement plan, not really.
But we do that because we want to see them grow.
Yeah,
I mean, that, it's not that we're trying to push them out.
No. No, but again, we're only picking things here from a place of love and admiration and seeing, potential and opportunity. So, yeah. And then the final thing, this will be a snake style draft. So I did flip a coin. Asher, it looks like you're going to go first, then I'll go again, then you'll go again until we reach the end. So there will be 6 picks total in 3 categories. The 3 categories are: first, an independent brand.
Yeah.
Second, a micro brand, or what we would call a challenger brand in the $5,000 and below category. And then finally, a mainstream luxury brand. There may be some room for interpretation in these. We can discuss that as that comes up. I don't think any of mine. One of mine might be kind of controversial. We'll have to see if you think it
interesting. Okay.
If it counts. So, Asher, you have first pick. You won the coin flip. And the first category here is independent brand. So you're picking in the draft. Which independent brand do you want to own and operate, and why?
Okay. In this imaginary world, I would love to own MB&F. And there's a few reasons why. One of them really is a kind of a technical thing that, although a profound thing, that Max has talked about. I think he mentioned it maybe once or twice in our podcast, but he certainly talked about it in general, which is the relationship that he has with his technical director. And to me, what's so exciting about what comes out of that brand, or really just what comes out of independent watches in general, is when you have somebody, and there are other brands like this, Konstantin Chaikin is like this to a degree, where there is an idea for a watch, Openwork is like this, where there's an idea for a watch and they back in many ways to how to make that work from a technical standpoint. But what's governing the idea is the concept of the watch. And to me, because I believe that storytelling is such a critical component of building a brand, whether it's a watch brand or frankly anything else, MB&F is one of the top brands to be able to tell a meaningful story, but have it also be easy to understand through the creation of a unique watch. And if I was going to be leading a brand for, years, decades to come, I'd want to know that I had unlimited road in front of me creatively. And obviously Max himself is an incredible creative, but what's interesting is, over the years, certainly with the Mad editions, he started to bring other people into that creative mix to create continuity while, for the decades that he's still with us, God willing, that will make sure that the MB&F stands for that kind of creativity and risk-taking and firm belief that watches are a meaningful canvas for storytelling. And he has the technical directors and the technical engineers on board to be able to make that plausible, which is really, really, really key. Yeah. Plus, I think I'd be walking into a relatively healthy business, if I'm being candid with you. You have investment from Chanel. You have prudent, from what we all know, financial management. We have a strong and dedicated team of people. If whenever we go and visit MB&F, it is the same group of people there. There's very little churn. Yeah. Very little churn tells me that the people who are there are happy and are proud of it. And, companies are made up of the people. Without the people is nothing. So I think all of those ingredients come together to offer what would be a really exciting company to lead, because its success or failure would be entirely driven by how much you support the people who are there. And the clients who love those watches are equally supportive and curious. So it's kind of a little bit of a layup, because they did all the hard work already. Yeah. You know what I mean? But if I was walking around with billions of dollars and I was just going to make an offer, that would be at the top of my list.
Yeah, one of the things Max spoke about when it was announced that Chanel bought a stake in the business was that a big part of the reason for that investment and bringing them in as a partner was to have a succession plan.
Yeah.
And this is a brand, of course, look, the MB and MB&F is Max Buser. And of course, he is inexorably tied to the brand and one of the biggest personalities in all of watchmaking, for sure. Yeah. And I don't want to undersell Max's, he's the key player in that business. However, this is a business and a brand that has given thought to how it operates beyond Max. So part of it is just even in the name, which invites collaboration and other people to come in and make their mark, which is the and friends. It's not just about Max. It's about other people who come in.
It's not Booser HE. You know?
Yeah. So there's a sort of this collaborative nature to the brand and the name and what it stands for and the kind of the core business model itself. There's clearly a succession plan that's been thought through and put in place. And the calling card of the brand, you're right, it's not a particular design aesthetic. And there are brands that are built around a particular aesthetic, and that's great. And the world should have brands like that too. There are brands that are built around a certain kind of watch, AP. There are brands that are built around all sorts of things. What MB&F at its core is built around is collaboration and doing things and creating watches or horological art that is conceptual in nature. You look at the watch, it's a frog.
Yeah.
Or a house or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And that is very extensible. And you can imagine how other people would come in over time and not just collaborate with Max, but could potentially take the reins and continue to do just that. So it's a brand, I think, even if you're just thinking cynically from like the defensibility of the business standpoint, right? And how well could this brand survive an ownership change?
Yeah.
And so some guy from California coming in and taking it over. This is a brand that I think is actually, despite, your love and admiration of what they do and just wanting to be a part of it, this is a brand I think that is actually uniquely set up to continue.
You can't pick this one. This is my pick.
Yeah. So no, I think it's a smart one. I think all of these brands we have here, like I said, are from a place of love and admiration, but there's probably different drivers that make them good candidates for a takeover, as it were. Which, by the way, if you or I were actually to take over any of these brands, I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm sure it would be a total disaster. We've never made a watch in our lives, but again, that's not really the purpose. This is fantasy land here. So,
all right, Guy,
can I give you my first pick? All right, so this might be the controversial one, and you have to tell me if you're going to let this one pass. So my pick for an independent brand, and look, I know we said, and part of it was to avoid it in the independent brand category. We said no AP, Patek, Rolex, or Richard Mille. These are all technically independent brands. They're independently owned. They're not publicly traded. So mine is Chopard. You tell me if you think that they qualify here.
Yeah.
They're independent.
They do. They're absolutely independent. I'm just sort of, I want to hear your logic on this one because you know how I feel about Chopard.
Well, I know you love Chopard. You're the person who opened my eyes to this brand. I think, look, Chopard, in my view, is a sleeping giant. And if I think back to 10, 15 years ago when Grand Seiko was considered to be this sleeping giant, this brand that was really for the cognoscenti, for people who really appreciated watches. These were the people, Jack Forster was famously an early proponent of the brand. And it was really the people who knew watches that knew Grand Seiko had all the ingredients and all the potential to be something amazing, and was already something amazing that the rest of the world had yet to discover.
For sure.
I kind of feel that way about Chopard now. Chopard is certainly in a different category than Grand Seiko. Forget just its independent and family-owned structure, but they're in a different segment of the market than Grand Seiko. But I feel the same way, which is this is a brand that is unimpeachable in its watchmaking, that makes fantastic products that do get renown and acclaim, but still not at the level that I think they should.
Yeah, see, it's interesting you say that because I thought you were going to say something different. Because, for you and for me, and for our business and like our own interest in Chopard as collectors, LUC is where the heat is.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't just be the CEO of LUC.
Oh, I would have jewelry I would need to think about and the entire watch range.
Well, that's my point. Like, to me, like that's kind of interesting from an ownership standpoint because of the diversification of the product line. Chopard, the way I became aware of Chopard just as a brand growing up was as a high jewelry brand.
Yeah, well, they started as a watchmaker. that veered into jewelry, and
Sure.
now they're more known for jewelry to the average.
But the high
person on
jewelry
the
was
street.
like what I
Absolutely.
kind of, what came into my circle of
I
knowledge.
think that's what they're still primarily known for.
Yeah, and that stuff is astonishingly beautiful. And then from that, it was sort of like the Mille that got my attention.
Oh yeah.
And then of course, like there's this
That's
whole
a cool watch.
Yeah, but there's this whole other category too of like very popular, more produced in higher quantity pieces like the Happy Diamonds and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find interesting about them as an independent is that they have a very large net with which to capture clients. Because if you have, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to spend, you can get a Mille, you can get a Happy Diamonds. I think I'm not totally sure about those price points, but in that general vicinity. Now of course they have this line that straddles the main line and LUC, which is the Alpine Eagle, which has grown.
Oh yeah, it has a foot in both. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, because there are some with LUC movements, there are some without. So that entire line also speaks like a segment of the market, which is more, I think, broad in its appeal than some of the more refined pieces that they offer through LUC, which is of course very targeted at this point, I would argue, at independents. And don't forget, of course, that they also own Ferdinand Berthaud.
Yep.
And Ferdinand Berthaud is a absolutely incredible horology brand.
Well, I don't know if that would be included in my purchase. Might be part of it, might not be.
That would be negotiated, I guess.
Who knows?
But my point is, like, you have a very broad product roadmap and a very broad assortment of audiences that you can address. So and
that's why I think it's a uniquely defensible business, because it's, again, this isn't a one watch brand. When you think about their watches, they have a strong performers in every category. The Mille is a great example of like a sporty chronograph. I love, by the way, that Bamford edition.
I owned that.
Yeah.
I owned that.
What an awesome watch. But there's Happy Diamonds, which plays into another growing segment of the market, which are these jewelry watches, shaped watches, things like that. Alpine Eagle is another great example. The LUC pieces, beautiful time-only watches, beautiful métier des arts pieces, like those marquetry dials that they launched last year. I mean, they're we talked in our last episode about one of the things that makes Journe so strong as a business from a product standpoint is like all of their watches are desirable. They make great watches in all those different categories. And I think the same is true of Chopard. It's like a uniquely defensible business. They have a well-diversified product portfolio, and it's just like waiting to pop off.
You're going to need a lot of money to buy that one.
It's not for sale, but I do think it's a brand. This is a brand. I mean, when you think about like the MB&F sale, it's like, okay, this is a smart sale, a smart, move to make to acquire it, right? Because the brand has this long-term extensibility. With Chopard, I think the smart, savvy business angle on this, I would be buying it because I like it and I think it's cool. And for everything we discussed, LUC to for number two, wow, what watchmaking. But I think the savvy business angle on this one would be, this is a brand that is in business that's incredibly diversified with compelling and amazing products, a very strong brand that can only get stronger. So I see this as a business that has a ton of potential going forward.
Yeah.
Off of an incredibly strong foundation. And I guess I'd have to learn a thing or two about jewelry, but why not? Seems like fun.
I would love to watch you learn a thing or two about jewelry. I would love to watch you like try and sell someone some jewelry.
Come on, man. Why you gotta be like that? So
it'd be fun.
You think that qualifies as an indie pick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So snake style draft, next category. I get the first pick this time. This is a micro brand.
Now we're into your wheelhouse here.
Challenger brands under $5,000. There are a ton of compelling options. If I were to pick from the same playbook I just did, I would probably pick Christopher Ward. That's sort of the Chopard of this category. I mean, I think it's a widely popular brand with a well-diversified product catalog and unimpeachable watchmaking bona fides that still has a ton of potential and growth. But my pick in this category is a brand that is near and dear to my heart, one of the micro brands that I've owned several watches from, and that's Monta. Monta makes, let's start with what I love about Monta. This is one where I think there's opportunity to open up the aperture a little bit. But at its core, what I love about Monta is, talk about products that are unimpeachable. These guys make an excellent watch. And the products are incredibly well made. The fit and finish on these products at the price point, everything here is under, I think, even $4,000 still. I don't even know, what does an Ocean King cost these days?
I'm going to look
it's probably
I actually don't
$3.
know right now.
Regardless of what they cost, these guys make an incredibly well-made, well-built watch with, every spec you as an enthusiast would expect from a dive watch or a time-only watch or a GMT.
Wow. A SkyQuest is $2,435. That's incredible.
So
and that's Atlas
the GMT.
is $2,100.
And then what's the Ocean King?
The Ocean King
watch?
is $2,550.
Okay, $2,550.
That's a great watch for $25.
Yeah,
wow.
No, it's a lot of watch. And, obviously people have complained. Monta has always been incredible from a value proposition standpoint in terms of offering you a really well-made and a really luxe watch at a very fair price.
Yeah.
And in the last few years, as watch prices have only gotten more and more expensive and to some absurd, like this, I think, is even more of a compelling value now than it was 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago when they launched. So this is coming from an incredibly strong foundation. I think they have a ton of opportunity to continue to move into other sport watch categories. Like, for instance, they don't have a chronograph.
Yeah, I'm just looking through like their product line here.
It's very tight. It's very clean, which is probably, they run like a very smart and a very well-structured business. But I think they have permission to expand the product catalog a little bit. And that's all. If I were to take over Monta, I would be doing it because I love it and I respect the product. And I think it's an incredibly well-made watch. The aesthetics of it appeal to me. And I think it has the opportunity to move into additional adjacent categories in the sports watch area. I mean, you could do a cool lume dial diver, as I said, chronographs. There's more to be done here, experimenting with different case materials. Like, how cool would a ceramic Monta be? And that would fit exactly within kind of the luxe tool watch vibe of this brand. So this is a brand where I think they can open up the aperture a little bit more, move into more categories, and they still have the potential and the space to do that. And I think the demand would be there. So the world needs more of what Monta does. And there's absolute potential to be able to continue to expand into other product categories and do that.
My personal experience with Monta, I think, aligns with that. But you raise a really good point, which is one of the things that I think a lot of businesses generally struggle with is they have really, really great ideas, but they suffer at execution. Mm-hmm. And this is really challenging, especially when you're not in the same country as your supply chain and your production line. And obviously Monta watches are made in Switzerland, as far as I know.
Yep.
And
They are the business is run in the U.S., designed in the U.S., but they are proudly Swiss made.
Exactly. And, the company is Midwestern, and they actually have figured out something that I think a lot of other companies haven't, which is what gives them, I think, the ability to have that acceleration opportunity, which is their supply chain is very strong. The quality of their componentry is exceptional. So if you've ever held an Ocean King, for example, like the bezel action is wonderful. The bracelets are really well made. These are the same guys that were behind Everest Straps that founded the company. So there's a real understanding of a lot of these, the requirement of tolerances for something to feel like the quality product that you want it to be, which was my reaction to the price point being so competitive. I didn't realize they were still priced that way. So, if you look at a company like that, you can say, okay, to your point, the opportunity to open the aperture a little bit more, have additional models, explore the design language is not going to be hindered by a lack of industrial background or engineering capability because they've already built that muscle. Mm-hmm. And there are so many micro brands out there that offer incredible design, but you pick the watch up and you're like, there's some rotor rattle or like there's some element of this that just doesn't meet the premium expectation that I would have of a 4-figure watch. Mm-hmm. And they don't have that problem.
Monta leaves absolutely nothing to be desired from a quality standpoint. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's an interesting pick. And the more I think about it, the more I could see like opportunity with that one too. So give those guys a call.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, will you guys sell me?
I got some Monopoly money right here.
Afford that. But that was an easy one for me. Also, just from a place of love, it's a brand that I've owned a lot of watches from. We know the guys there, Mike and Justin, and they're they're wonderful people and they make a really great product that we respect and admire. So in my fantasy land, I would be proud to be a part of that. What's your pick?
Oh boy, this is a tough one. But I think I would.
It's spoiled for choice here.
It really is. I'm gonna make an offer to Jose over at Isotope.
Yeah.
I love, first of all, I love him.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who've never met the founder.
Is he going to be able to keep his job if you buy the business? You're going to keep him around?
Well, he'll have a 90-day performance improvement plan. Okay. What is it exactly that you do here? Yeah, no, but ironically, the answer to that is everything.
Yeah.
So Jose is Isotope. Isotope is Jose.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why is that I think that when you have somebody who has proven not only are they a capable business owner, not only are they a capable creative, but they're able to put it all together into something that still feels somewhat still feels cohesive, still has a clear like general design language, but the diversity of ideas is astonishing. And what's interesting too, and the reason why I would want to, in this draft invest, is that you can see the evolution of his ambition, the brand's ambition, I should say, and its ability over the course of the years, mm-hmm. right? So like when I look at Isotope, I came to really know the watch, from the sort of Hydrium, like their dive watch, which is really cool, like big, chunky, but not overbearing, diver. And then there's this like endless variation on that line, that goes to all sorts of different places. There's NASA versions, there's crazy divers, there's artistic collaborations, there's tongue in cheek,
Didn't they do a cool Scottish watches?
Yeah, they did one with Scottish watches. There was a sushi it's like all over the map in terms of like the opportunity for expression. The I will come back later, the return later sign, like super, super cool. And then he'll drop something that was just mind-blowingly creative, inventive, and incredibly difficult. And that's the Moonshot chronograph.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah, and it's not just the Moonshot chronograph. It's also the Avni jumping hour.
Mm-hmm.
So if you zoom out really far on the brand, what's clear and where I see the opportunity is you have these very distinct product Can you say very distinct or something just distinct? It's like you can't say something's very... it can't be very unique because it's just unique.
I don't know.
This is the kind of stuff my grandma would like rag on me about. Be like, "That's very unique." She'd be like, "No, it's unique. It can't be extra unique."
Yeah,
anyway, whatever.
I never got that one. My mother was a school teacher, but I never heard that.
Well,
that's a new one.
So Grandma Eva lives on. It's you can't be very unique. Anyway, if you think about what's possible with the dive line, the Moonshot chrono, and the Avni, and you look at these as like families, like.
Oh man, he's got a wall clock. He's got the return and exit wall clock now. Oh man, I'm just going through the site here.
But again, zooming out, these product families are very, very ownable. They are executions that are obviously from Isotope, from across a room.
Yep.
And there's very few watches that are like that in this category. Where from across the room, I'm like, yep, that's a Isotope, right?
That Mercury watch he did with Revolution.
Yeah,
that
man.
thing's cool.
There's a lot of really cool watches that he's made, and I can't stress enough, like it's really just him. So the amount, like, so to me, looking at this as like if I in my imaginary watch VC fund,
mm-hmm.
I would see that as a owner operator that has that I would want to fund to accelerate.
Yeah, and I think. Maybe I'll put some words in your mouth here, but like what some outside investment could do and like bringing you in as this owner operator where you'd have to run the business, that would actually...
It would free him up
to focus on design and the watchmaking side of the business.
And this is
versus doing it all, as you say.
Well, this was some feedback that you and I got from Nicholas Bowman Scargill many, many years ago. Remember where we hadn't hired anyone yet. We were out to dinner and Nick and I didn't want to do it until we had like 6 months of salary for that person in the bank, et cetera, whatever. And Nick pointed out to us that the best time to hire is when you need the person, not when you feel like you're ready for the person.
Yeah, he said if you wait until you're ready, it's too late.
Exactly. Yeah. And what another way to interpret that is essentially if your business is moving, bringing someone in can help accelerate it by relieving pressure on you and allowing you to focus on the things that you're best at, as opposed to, and I empathize with this tremendously because for the beginning years of Collective, it was just you and me.
We did everything.
Yeah. And in many cases, in my case, certainly, like many things with a degree of mediocrity.
For both of us.
Yeah.
Everyone has strengths and weaknesses.
Totally. So tons of things, P&L, that like I just was not good at. And
I did. I do the P&L. And
yeah, well, there's a reason you do the P&L.
Yeah, true. But I've even had some blunders there.
Yeah, well, But my point is...
But those are pleasant surprises.
Totally.
Hey, it's Gabe. Openwork is proudly ad-free and requires no paid subscription. If you'd like to support the show, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platform of choice. Please also check out and subscribe to Collective Horology on YouTube, where you'll find hundreds of videos we've made on independent watchmaking. You can find our channel at collectivehorology.com/YouTube. And of course, you can always support the podcast by picking up a watch from over a dozen independent brands, along with our latest merch at collectivehorology.com. Thanks for listening and for your support. Now back to the show.
My point is, if I apply that logic to isotope, I think it really would be, match meet gas. Like there's so much potential there because the vision for the brand is so clearly articulated and the passion for it is so obviously there. And yeah, here's to Jose. That's a brand I would want to invest in with my fund.
Yeah, I think a good analog for that. Yeah, exactly. A good analog for isotope in that regard is Ming.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But the difference is like when Ming, the brand, started, they did have multiple people who were owner operators of the business. It wasn't just Ming Tien, himself making stuff, going to every trade show or whatever. But over time, he's realized that he needs to let go of the operation of the business so that he can focus on the product development and design and enable the rest of the team to do their jobs.
Yeah.
And bring in people to do that. And that's allowed him to really accelerate and take the product development of the business to, you look at a Ming watch today versus what they were making 9 years ago when they started.
The iteration is so clear.
It's pretty remarkable. So, imagine isotope watches are already awesome from a product and a design standpoint. Imagine how much further that could accelerate. Pretty exciting, frankly.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Final category here, mainstream luxury brand. You get the first pick. I'm curious to see what you think a mainstream luxury brand is.
That I would want to be the CEO of?
Yeah. Right. You got to put your money on the table too.
Yeah,
this fake money.
This one was actually real easy for me. Yeah. I would love to own and operate Vacheron Constantin.
Oh, that's makes sense.
Super easy for me. And there's a lot of reasons. There's sentimental reasons for that. But I'll remove those because
that's important.
There's no place for sentimentality in venture capital.
It's not true. This whole business, this whole industry is built on sentimentality. It matters.
Let's get Mark Andreessen on the pod. Ask him about sentimentality.
I had no idea what that reference is to, but sure.
Fair enough. Okay.
Either way, I don't really think I want to hear his opinion on that.
Just right, because of my setup. But okay, taking a step back, from a purely business standpoint, there's a lot of reasons why I would want to do this. First of all,
was it only because AP was taken off the table?
Oh God,
would you have picked Vacheron regardless? It sounds like you would have.
No, someone would need to pay me to run AP.
Okay,
but for me to put my money on the table, it would be Vacheron, and there's a couple of reasons there. One, I have always felt that there has been, and I mean this in the highest compliment, a real kind of like quiet challenge to the more established Patek Philippe line of more dress oriented watches out there that has come from Vacheron. Like Vacheron to me has always had a much more elegant, and this is a personal taste thing, but a more elegant, more refined, more gentlemanly energy to it than some of its competitors have. And that's always been true too on the innovation side. The innovations from ultra thin movements, for example, within Vacheron is well known, well established, and many of those calibers. Heck, I own one. I own two. I own one that my grandfather.
Right. Yeah.
Like when I got married, I wore that watch, and it's an ultra thin Vacheron caliber from the 1960s. I bought one, as I mentioned on the pod a couple times, from the Davidoffs a few months ago. Another absolutely beautiful Geneva sealed ultra thin caliber. And these watches, when you put them on, they have this. They feel. They're like imbued with this like extraordinary elegance that makes them so wonderful on the wrist. And then when you look at the modern line and what. And in this case, I would say hat tip to Richemont, because I think of the brands that Richemont owns, it's one of the best managed ones, certainly of the last 5 years. I mean, the overall effort and energy that they've put into revitalizing the brand, from moving it from what could have felt a little bit as like dusty luxury into something that feels vibrant, but without giving into kitsch. Like, this is the interesting thing about them. Like, if you look at the way that they've embraced sort of like the arts, if you will, or that they've embraced just the aesthetic of their stores evolving into a place that feels very high luxury, but also very bright and airy, and like almost feels like there's art installation. Like in New York, like some of those just the overall design of it feels almost like there's installations there. Like it feels like architecturally beautiful space that you want to inhabit, and then the watches sort of fit into them. So the experience of being there feels like an amazing articulation of the brand without digressing. Like there's no limited editions with artist design dials and things like that. Like the brand is the brand, but or rather I should say the product is the product, but the brand has evolved around it. And I find that to be a good
way of putting it.
I find that to be so cool. And then, they're also a brand that has managed to have a great and successful luxury sports watch line that has not eclipsed the product. Like I love Vacheron. If I had $100,000 to spend on a watch, I don't think the overseas, like there are some overseas I think are cool, but as a collector, there's so many other options from Vacheron in those price ranges that are as compelling, if not more so, than what you can get from the overseas line. And that to me signals product health in a way that is incredibly appealing from a business owner standpoint. Because, like the worst thing that you'd want is to buy a brand where you're selling people, traditionals to get them their overseas. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Like I'm sure it does. But like, as far as I'm concerned,
probably a time when it did.
Sure. But like, as far as I'm concerned, like as a collector, and I think a lot of other people, like they see a lot of incredible stuff in the traditional line.
Or they may not even be interested in the overseas at all anyway.
That's my point. Yeah. And I'm not even getting into like the high comps and things of that nature, And it's interesting too, because you would say like, well, the 222 might, over like the steel 222, is that the watch you want? And I mean, I've been lucky enough to I have we have some clients that own them. I've been lucky enough to get a steel 222 on my wrist. Watch is awesome. But again, if I had $40,000 or $50,000, whatever that watch costs, to buy a Vacheron,
that's not what you.
No, I would probably be buying a complete calendar, like those, like the partially skeletonized complete calendar, because that watch speaks to me and isn't necessarily where the heat is, so to speak, but it's an awesome watch. So if I was going to be stepping into a leadership role there, I see a brand that's in great health, multiple product lines with diversity and clear point of view that offer, I think, a lot of compelling opportunity for a client. So you're not constantly funneling people into one product line or another. I see a retail network of owned and operated boutiques that look like they could be epicenters and hubs for community. I know from our clients who are Vacheron clients, they are fiercely passionate about the brand. Yeah. Like people who love Vacheron. It's
kind of shocking. This is a publicly traded company. It's part of a giant multi-billion-dollar multinational luxury conglomerate. And the people we know who are Vacheron collectors are ardent fans of the brand and the people at the brand.
Yes. And I do know from those same clients that they invest in the people who invest in them. And I don't just mean that from an allocation standpoint. I mean, just in general, they spend time with the people who show commitment.
They care about relationships.
They do. Yeah. And then finally, their restoration work on their historic pieces is exceptional, which creates an other revenue line, which I think is so cool, which, other brands are doing, but Vacheron is doing really well, where they have an entire community of people who will take in and lovingly restore, like with great care and detail, historic Vacheron references, which not only does it help preserve the heritage of the brand, and yes, by the way, I know Patek does this too. I know, Rolex to a very little degree does this too with certain references, but Vacheron does it really, really, really well. Like I've seen some pieces that they've restored where they've kept the integrity of the watch. They didn't make it look new, but they restored it to its former glory. And that to me is just magnificent because not only does it create and maintain the heritage of the brand, it creates an entirely new revenue stream where you have a client that may own 20 Vacherons, be a huge Vacheron collector, and there is a way to continually find revenue with them through restoration.
And offer them something truly rare and special.
Well, here's the thing. They don't even have to sell them the watch, right? That's a watch you could buy at auction and it goes to them for restoration, for example, if that's a thing you'd want to do. And it's just an incredible service and revenue opportunity that demonstrates to me that they actually have a real understanding of customer life cycle and the way that people collect. So from a business standpoint, you have incredible product lines that don't cannibalize each other. You have an amazing retail network that, as described, has all the features that we like. You have a restoration function that allows you to pay attention to where someone is in a customer life cycle and still find ways to have both a artistic and commercial relationship with them. And you're doing this at a scale. It's 20, 30,000 watches at most a year. You're doing this at a scale that's manageable for you to still have that. And you're doing without, trying to go to 50, 60, 70, 80,000 watches, without the ability to maintain, build, and support the relationship. So much respect to Vacheron.
Well, thank you for your love letter to Vacheron, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. What would you do differently? I mean, you want to just own this thing and, keep it hermetically sealed and not change anything? Or is there some potential you see there for, taking an ownership stake? What would you do differently?
I think that there is a massive opportunity to erode Patek Philippe from Vacheron. Massive. And there's sort of two angles for that to work. One of which it would be a symptom, so to speak, of like the effective approach, which would be you would see the secondary market increase. Because let's be honest, a lot of things I think Patek collectors think about is the secondary value of their watches.
Yeah.
And I say that because that's what I hear when I'm dealing with someone on a trade or a valuation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my learned experience as a dealer.
Yep.
And I think if you can do that is that will be the natural consequence of the first point, which is to put blinders on and be removed from the structure of a corporate environment where you can't pretend that JLC and Longa are there or aren't there, right? If you purge that out, then you actually can edge your way into some of the things that those other brands are required to cover on like the corporate splat mat.
So you're spinning this out from Richemont and liberating the brand from the shackles of being managed relative to everything else that's sitting around it in the
I have no interest in working for a gigantic corporation again. But
so that's part of the opportunity.
I do, but I think that the reason why is that Vacheron, I think, has already demonstrated their ability to play in several different product categories. Mm-hmm. And if they felt that if they had the ability and the permission structure to push it even further into those categories without worrying that they were cannibalizing a Longa sale or a JLC sale or what have you, I think the potential for growth is astronomical, because I do think that they'd be able to offer something to people who are Patek collectors that they don't currently get. Patek Philippe, and we've talked about this before, like excluding the grand comps, which are masterpieces, mm-hmm. the majority of the product line is essentially a perfectly nice, machine. I don't want to say machine-made watch, but like line-made watch. It is an industrially made watch.
What's your thesis here? That the Vacheron stuff that competes against it is better made, better value?
Again, I want to be very careful about how I say this because it's not a categorically true statement.
It's your opinion.
But I do think that the watch, like the actual watchmaking on the majority of watches, not just the high end, mm-hmm. exceed what you get from Patek.
Got it. Yeah, this is a little bit of my Chopard thesis as well.
Yes. Now, I do think that Longa offers obscenely high-end watchmaking, yep. and that there is a legitimate equal threat to Patek from Longa if we're talking about a pure watchmaking standpoint. Mm-hmm. But Longa, as much as I, as a collector, love the brand, I don't think that I would be the right, I can't imagine running that brand, because I don't think that they want to change who they are ever. No. They are who they are, and I would be so for me, not me. But Vacheron, I think, is willing to adapt and change, and I think with their adaptability and removed from the group, they could elbow out the competition They could do a better job in some cases on some watches in the competition. They could erode some of Patek's success and in doing so increase their secondary market value.
Yeah, I would, if I were just thinking about who do I think the bigger Patek killer is between, say, Lange and Vacheron, I'd go with Vacheron for a number of reasons. I think the most important one is brand and equity. Lange just doesn't have the equity that Vacheron does. I mean, Vacheron's been around for longer and just has such an impressive back catalog and is a brand that people and their families have known for decades. They're heirlooms that get passed down, and it's Swiss.
Yeah.
And explaining the whole German watchmaking thing to people and the A Lange Zone name and all that, it's a little complicated, whereas something like a Patek Philippe, a Vacheron, even Chopard, because it's Swiss, because it's a little bit more mainstream, it's easier to metabolize.
We're talking about this purely from a messaging standpoint.
Purely from, I'm trying to build a global luxury brand.
Yeah.
Lange, and this is taking all the watchmaking out of it. Lange is just very inside.
Well, another way, and I'll give you one final example of why I think there's potential there if it was given the juice to do it. Look, just compare the 5811 to the modern base model. I guess, to be fair, the 5811 compared to like the gold overseas base model, because that would be, I guess, essentially a 1-to-1 comparison.
5811 is what, a Nautilus of some sort?
Yeah,
that's the gold Nautilus.
It's the modern version of the time only Nautilus, but it's only available in gold. Okay. And sure, like there were some changes from the 5711, right? I mean, you have bracelet adjustment, quick adjust. It hacks.
Yes, that's the big news.
Well, I mean, in fairness, the last generations of the 5711 did too, but whatever. But that caliber has, it has been around for quite some time, and not, the updates to it notwithstanding. But really, the 5811 is essentially the 5711 in gold with a couple of adjustments, but it's largely a 5711. The modern overseas has gone through so many iterations and changes over the last 25 years. So many.
Yeah, it feels like a much more modern watch.
It is a much more modern watch.
Yeah.
And I think that And it's not cutting any corners. I mean, the movement in there is astonishingly beautiful.
The finishing of those watches is
exceptional.
Yeah.
So what you have is a much more modern, extremely elegant sports watch from a haute horology brand that I think offers a lot more if you're willing to look for it. And the only way, but you still are fighting you're still climbing the mountain against the Patek Philippe brand, because that little drop of ink on the dial that says Patek Philippe is really what makes the Nautilus
it's worth something.
Exactly. And Vacheron, in order to get that Maltese cross to the same level, there's brand work to be done, but it's not product work. And I think that's interesting to me, because I do think that there are some soft underbelly spots to target with Patek that Vacheron could effectively do if they had the wherewithal, the financing, and the freedom to do it.
Got it. So what was your mainstream luxury brand again?
A Patek.
I'm kidding. All right. So this is the last one. I was going to do IWC as my mainstream.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously.
Brand. But no, you picked Vacheron, so I'm going to go outside of the Richemont company, and I'm going to take a little bit of a zag here. I'm going to pick Grand Seiko.
Huh.
And
didn't you say like you've sold every Grand Seiko you ever had?
I have. That's why I'm going to get my hands on this thing. So I think, as I said, I think for everyone, whether aesthetically or even product-wise, purely like Grand Seiko is your thing, I think it's intellectually something that all watch enthusiasts really admire. I know I certainly do. And Grand Seiko, for me, is the prototypical example, although I have owned some of their watches. My wife owns a Grand Seiko, which she loves. It's her favorite watch. One of those awesome time-only, high accuracy 9F quartz watches. Beautiful watch, really, with the dial is just so well finished. In any event, it's the poster child for me of a brand who I intellectually love and admire, but whose products just aren't for me. And that is exactly why I would love to get my hands on it. I think that it has really so many key ingredients to continue to be successful. I mean, they've had a meteoric rise, and I still think there's room to grow.
Would you buy Seiko, or are you buying just Grand Seiko?
Look, this is a watch brand draft.
No,
man.
but
like I said, we don't know if Ferdinand Berthoud is even included in the Chopard deal. This is I'm just buying Grand Seiko.
So you'd sweeten the pot for Seiko if Seiko and Presage and all the other sub brands would come in.
I haven't even thought about that. This is just the Grand Seiko is the brand I'm drafting here.
Okay.
This isn't a watch business draft. It's a brand draft. So next we'll have to do a holding company draft.
Cool.
You were wondering what the next Openwork draft would be. It's the holding company.
I'll be
draft.
on vacation for that one.
Stay tuned. Yeah, we could do some interesting ones, like an executive draft. There could be
I would do that.
There could be some really interesting.
Okay, don't weasel out of this.
Drafts
Keep going with.
So no, I wouldn't buy all of Seiko. This is a Grand Seiko deal. Not that I don't love Seiko, I do, but I think that for me, it's like I'd love to get my hands on this brand because there's just a few things I'd tune up and fix, and man, would this be a brand for me, because I think the product is excellent. I think the brand is there. It's remarkable to me they've come as far as they have and gone really now as mainstream as they had with Seiko in the name. They've managed to turn it from a liability or something that a lot of us thought would be a liability to a strength. Regardless, what would I do? Well, first, some basic things. We need to work on the bracelets here, people. We need some micro adjust. We can start with that. And then I think, from a product standpoint, I would really just be working on aesthetics. Case size and dimensions and ergonomics is another thing. So easy to knock the bracelets. The cases generally have been criticized, and I feel this really outside of the 9F stuff. They're just too thick, too tall. So I think proportions need to be worked on, and I think aesthetics should need to be worked on a little bit. Sometimes the Grand Seiko stuff just feels a little bit too precious for what it is. For me, at least, I really like sports watches and sporty watches. That's also where the heart of the watch market is. And so some of the Grand Seiko stuff just feels a bit too dressy to fundamentally address the core of the market and go after Rolex and Tudor and Omega and Breitling. And I think the brand needs some design changes and some finishing changes to be able to more squarely go after those brands and compete better in the sports watch position. So I'd be looking at focusing more on tool watches. And even when they do tool watches, like they've done all those kind of like Explorer 2 kind of themed GMT watches. They've got some great 9F ones. They've done spring drive GMTs, but they're just a bit too fussy. It's like they're over finished.
The thing that would make me nervous about buying Grand Seiko is I always sort of wonder why they have gotten into such an intense iterative mode where they have more SKUs than I can.
So many variations on a theme.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, do you think that from a brand standpoint, does that come from a place of power with them? Because for me, I'm always just kind of like, when you look at the product families, right? The product families are well defined. Mm-hmm. The different cases and things of that nature. Yeah, there's
like sport and heritage and
and there's very specific case dimensions, et cetera. When you look at like the white birch and that sort of like high end,
the Evo cases.
Yeah, exactly.
Like more traditional is like the GS.
There's lots of
the
44 GS.
Yeah,
I'm not a Grand Seiko guy, so don't come at me about these.
Beautiful,
but there are definitely like defined families there. And then there's like 60 different references in many of these different families.
Yeah, I think they're just too parochial about like what makes a Grand Seiko and these design codes and rules that everything ends up looking like a dressy sports watch.
Well, yeah, good point. But I guess this is my question for you about it though. If you were going to, like, from a brand standpoint, do you think that level of diversity helps the brand or hurts the brand? And if you were going to be running it,
I think it hurts the brand. I think they need a level of diversity.
Sure.
But I think what they end up having now is they have a diversity, but it's pretty narrow in terms of it's a lot of variations on a theme.
Yeah.
Versus saying like, okay, guys, you have the dressy sports watch thing nailed. Great. Well done there. Cool. Let's focus a little bit on opening up the aperture here. What do we need? It's actually a bit like the Manta thing to some extent. It's like, where are the chronographs? Where are the tool watches? Where are the dress watches? I know they have dress watches.
And chronographs.
Yes, but a very, very limited number of chronographs. And I know they have some really cool like GMT chronographs and all this.
And the tentograph.
And the tentograph. But where's the straight up chronograph? You know what I mean? So I think my point here is like, they're so parochial about the design that everything ends up looking like this dressy sports watch.
Yeah.
And I think they could say like, okay, we've done that. Let's pare that down, those products down, and focus those products on what really makes sense and what really sells. Then let's look at what we really need for a tool watch. And let's not be so like parochial about like, well, it has to be a Grand Seiko tool watch and meet all these different, it's like, guys, lighten up a little bit. Come on, relax. And I think they need some permission to move into other categories and just get out of this very narrow corner they painted themselves into of dressy sports watches.
Yeah.
And I think they could do it. And I think they'd be rewarded for it. I think there'd be a market for it. And, if they work on their ergonomics a little bit and they put some micro adjust in the bracelets, then I think they're really cooking with gas.
Yeah. The other thing about Grand Seiko that I always keep going in circles around, or circles in my head around, is the separation of Grand Seiko from Seiko. And then, but still keeping Grand Seiko on the marquee. And I struggle with that and have done for a long time, because if the premise of separating Grand Seiko from Seiko was about making sure they could elevate the brand so it didn't carry some of the baggage that some people may have around, like a Seiko 5 costing a couple $100 and this watch costing 10 to 20 times that. Yeah. But then you keep Seiko in the name anyway. It's just this, it feels, it's like, it's not Grand Toyota, it's Lexus. You know what I mean? Even though if you think about it, it really is a Grand Toyota. Like,
don't forget the good people at Acura.
This is my point, though. Like, there's a reason.
I wonder if anyone will get that reference.
Isn't that Honda? That's Honda,
Acura,
right?
But yeah, some people call it Acura.
Okay.
And then there's good old Infiniti. Who could forget Infiniti? Nissan.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But my point is, there's a reason that it is Lexus, not Toyota.
Yeah.
And I just struggle with that from a brand standpoint, because I'm like, if you wanted to separate it out, then you should have separated it out.
Yeah, I generally used to have that same view of things, but they've managed to move past it.
So you think that as a brand, they've managed to make Grand Seiko not feel related to its former or its current parent company?
I think it's related, but it's become a shorthand in a positive way. So two things. One is Seiko itself has really evolved from what it was even 10 years ago. I mean, one of the great refrains now from so many enthusiasts is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how expensive Seiko watches are. Like an ISO certified Seiko dive watch, that's damn near $1,000 for something like that now, maybe accepting some SRP turtles and something like that. But, like the basic 62 Moss kind of modern reinterpretation dive watches are over $1,000. That's kind of
well over.
That's just the dive watch that, they make. That's kind of the protagonist, the poster child for their dive watch family is that watch. Like, that would have been unimaginable to have your kind of icon product in that category be over $1,000 even 10 years ago. So Seiko, I think itself has risen in quality and prestige. They've done a lot with the Seiko brand to clean up the Seiko market and elevate Seiko overall and take it out of like this world of like being perceived as like a drugstore and department store brand. And a lot has happened positively with Seiko. And as a result, I think that helps the Grand Seiko thing. It's like, oh, well, this is the even better version of Seiko. And then I think they've somehow managed, I'm not sure how, it wouldn't have been the advice I would have given them if I were a consultant. I would have done the same thing you did. I would have gone to the board and I would have said Toyota and Lexus, Nissan and Infiniti. That's probably not one I wanted to.
Yeah, probably not.
Why are the Infiniti drivers always the worst? It's just the worst.
Are they?
When someone's like acting the fool on the highway, you turn, that's an Infiniti. That checks out.
It's just you.
That brand won't be around much longer, which is probably why I wouldn't use in the presentation. But I would have said the same thing, Volkswagen and Audi, whatever it might be. They've managed to somehow really elevate Grand Seiko and put it into luxury circles. And they committed to doing that. They stuck with it and it's worked. I think Grand Seiko does have a level of prestige now that it didn't have 10 years ago. So they deserve some credit there. Not the advice I would have given, but they've managed to stick the landing, I think.
Enough.
And that if I took over the brand, if you asked me 10 years ago, if you're going to take over the Grand Seiko brand, what would you do differently? I would have started there. I'd say, then you got to change the name of the brand. That's it. Like, then we can't do anything until we do that first. Turns out I was wrong about that. If I were to take over the brand today, I would say it's Grand Seiko. That's awesome. The brand works. Let's go. What we really need to do is work on expanding our product portfolio here and tuning up the product, because this is a brand that people, root for and want to see succeed. I know I do.
Godspeed.
I mean, you've owned plenty of Grand Seikos.
Oh, totally.
You got respect for the brand?
I got nothing but love for the brand.
It's been a while since you've owned a Grand Seiko, though, hasn't it? Years.
Maybe 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the last Grand Seiko you owned?
The modern variant of the Snowflake. It's like the something or other 211 or whatever the reference is.
But the titanium Snowflake. Yeah. Those things still just kill.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Awesome watch.
But there you go. Dressy tool watch. They do that well. Let's expand.
100%.
All right. The first ever Openwork Watch Brand Draft. Some amazing picks in here. Asher, you picked for your independent brand, MB&F. I picked Chopard. For micro brands, I picked Monta. You picked Isotope. And of course, for mainstream luxury brands, you picked Vacheron and I picked Grand Seiko. There are clearly some themes in there, but maybe that's for another time. Good picks. Good discussion. Should we leave it there?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. Openwork is, of course, a production of Collective Horology. You can find us online at collectivehorology.com. Unfortunately, you can't find any of today's brands there, but you can find over a dozen independent brands.
You'll find them in the mergers and acquisition section.
Oh, yes. We'll have to add that to the site navigation. And of course, please get in touch with your questions, your feedback, your suggestions. We love that stuff. And to do that, just email podcast@collectivehorology.com.
Yeah.